that architect from that IT company, who is an Azure partner, did not expect me to even know that, and number two, that I would even have the balls to ask that question. So last week I was hired. I was hired, I don't know when, but last week I had to go on site. A client, a very large international conglomerate, a multinational industrial company that does, I think they have 19 business units, 160,000 employees, one of the biggest companies in the world. I was hired to do a peer review of a large IT company who was pitching an Industry 4.0 solution, and to do a peer review of the corporate manufacturing execution team, the one who was tasked with the digital MES system for this large company. They're based in Europe. That team is based in Europe. The large IT company is based here. The cloud infrastructure is all Azure. And I was hired to basically come in and speak on behalf of the location that they were doing this summit at. What the current architecture is there, what was the digital strategy that they're actually using, what their minimum technical requirements are, and to critique what was being suggested by the IT company and what was being recommended by the corporate company or the corporate MES team. I'm trying to be careful with everything I say, so bear with me. It didn't go well. Obviously, it didn't go well. The large IT company basically pitched a standard. They were basically preying on the organization's ignorance, and they were pitching a very standard digital thread solution. And I tweeted about this. Hey, large IT company says here's your solution on the slide here, and my response was, hey, that's digital thread. And they said, yup. And I said, well, that's not going to work for these guys. It doesn't work for anyone. Show me, do you have an example of a successful implementation where digital thread is the foundation of the digital infrastructure? And it was just crickets. They're not used to somebody even asking that question. I wrote about that I tweeted that the engagement didn't go that well. It ended up well in the end, but the experience during the week didn't go well. And I want to talk about the difference between leadership and being a manager, like the mindset of being a leader versus being a manager. Now, this summit involved, say, 30 to 40 people. Half of them were from across this organization. The other half were consultants who were trying to sell shit. There were many. The corporate MES guy and I went right at it. There were three architects there, me, one from the IT company, one from the corporate headquarters. And if you want to see fireworks, put a couple of architects who have differing philosophical positions in the same room and watch them kill each other. And that's basically what happened. You had me and the corporate guy going right at it. He literally said, like, I don't give a shit what your opinion is. Like he literally, he's standing over me going, I don't care what your opinion is. We're going to do it my way. And I said, well, I can't allow you to do that because there are things that you have said about digital transformation that are just not true. You have stated things here that are not true. And I'm not going to stand here and let you say something that isn't true so that my client gets stuck with the garbage you give them. Okay. So that's how the initial conflict started. The reason that I push in those situations, and the reason you need to push in these situations, especially when you're having the architectural discussions in the beginning, is because all those decisions that are made during those fact-finding sessions, information gathering, if you look at the large IT companies, how they always see, they call it information gathering, and they need 3 to 4 weeks or whatever. That 3 to 4 weeks is not them gathering information. They already know what they want to do. Okay. that 3 to 4 weeks is figuring out what they can get away with. And that's not me being cynical. That's my observation. It is, what is it we can actually sell these people? Whether we know it's going to work or not. That's their mentality. Okay. This corporate guy, his opinions were not based in experience on the manufacturing floor. So I'm just going to kind of lay out what happened during the week and then what the result was. So in the first day, we had the fireworks. We were in a conference room, and me and the 2 architects, and then all of their supporting teams. So my supporting team, their supporting teams are all around us at this table while we're going at it on architecture. My approach to picking apart a flawed architecture is using the Socratic method. So remember, never ask a question you don't already know the answer to, and then ask questions and use the response to questions to reveal the truth. Instead of making declarative statements, right, that this is a truth, what you do is you reveal what is not truth by asking questions, right? So there were things like, and I'll give you an example with the large IT company. They put a digital thread diagram up on the screen, and they said, this is how we believe what your architecture should look like. The solutions for this these stakeholders will be in this little box right here, and the solution for these stakeholders will be in this box right here, and the solution for the plant will be in this box right here, right? We've all seen these diagrams, the digital thread diagrams. And rather than me saying, hey, that's not going to work, I didn't start there. What I did was I never even sat down. When they put me in this architecture meeting, I never even sat down. I actually stood. I looked at the screen. There was probably maybe 15 people in there. There were a couple of executive vice presidents. I mean, there were important people in there, a bunch of architects. I walked up to the front of the room. There was a whiteboard to the right, and I drew a little sketch out, automation stack, and I asked a couple of questions. Number one, I asked them, you have a master data model in this layer of the stack, okay, in L2, L3 over here. You have a master data model in the cloud over here, which is the backend for your IoT layer in Azure. How are you going to reconcile? And I basically drew a circle between the two. And I said, how will you reconcile the reality in this master data model with the reality in this master data model without writing custom code in an SDK? That was the first question I asked. Now, that architect from that IT company, who is an Azure partner, did not expect me to even know that was going to be a problem, that was a gap. And number two, that I would even have the balls to ask that question, knowing that he's not going to have an answer. So he looked at me like literally his eyes were, what the he said, and he did the classic kick the can down. Well, we're going to have those conversations in the meeting tomorrow morning, Friday morning. Okay. So then I said, okay, pause. The next thing that I said was, I drew on the board. I said, you have a plant level IoT layer that's going to have a software platform that the site's going to be able to use to build applications. Okay. Obviously they were recommending you use Power BI and Power Apps for most data and information consumption coming out of the cloud, right? That classic digital thread architecture. But they had a box. It's a new box. They didn't have this before, but they had a box in L3, which is at the site level. And that box was IoT platform, and it was for the site to build solutions in. And I was pointing out, well, the master data model in that and the master data model in your cloud infrastructure will not be the same. They're deterministic. So if I make a change in one, it doesn't automatically change in the other, and vice versa, right? How will you reconcile those data models? Moreover, your cloud infrastructure is Azure. Azure is not agnostic. That is, the master data models are not agnostic. The applications inside of Azure are dependent upon certain attributes and parameters, columns in their tables, like TSI, time series insights, which is a trending tool for time series data. It requires a very specific semantic header for each insert. So if I'm using an API call to insert a time series record that I want TSI to consume, you have to format the header in a very specific way, in a way that is completely different than the way that the IoT platform on the plant floor or at the site does it. They're different. Okay, so now what I've got to do is create a connector for each time series event, so that what I do is I change when I'm going from site to data lake, I'm adding this specific times TSI header. And when I'm consuming from data lake back to site, I remove that header and I reconcile it with whatever ID, primary key, whatever I'm using for the time series data on the plant level. So we're having this conversation. I pointed out that architectural problem. This is something that's obviously going to jump up. Then the second question I asked was, I drew the square that was the site level, and I drew the container in which the platform was going to run. And I said, who owns that container? So it's the site level. It's the site level architecture. They're going to put a IoT platform in there. And I pointed to that box and I said, who owns that container? And they said, oh, well, corporate IT will own that. And I said, well, then in that case, that means corporate IT is responsible for enablement, which means that's not going to work. That isn't how digital transformation works. You have to enable, you have to unlock potential on the plant floor by enabling people to solve their own problems within their own infrastructure off of basic minimum technical requirements. And so if, as they solve their problems, they create namespaces that consume data and generate information, you have to have a mechanism to publish that into a common infrastructure. You're taking a completely different approach, one that we know doesn't work. So then they push back pretty hard, the corporate IT team and the IT consultant. They had a whole team of engineers there, by the way. So it was this Azure consultant with maybe 4 or 5 engineers sitting at the table. And I pointed at the screen and I said, that is a classic digital thread architecture. And all their engineers nodded their head yes. And I said, and that doesn't work. So now I made the declarative statement. After I asked all the Socratic questions, I made the declarative statement. And I said, and that doesn't work. And when I said that declarative statement, I was prepared to defend my position. Except they didn't ask me to. So then I gave them do you have any examples? I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Do you have any examples of that architecture working A, at scale for any organization, okay, and B, being an effective foundation or framework for the digital infrastructure of any organization outside of cloud-based solutions? And it was fucking crickets. They didn't say a fucking word, okay? So I followed up with, okay, I was the one who, I said, here's my recommendation. I said, I'm not, we have a difference in philosophy. I'm not going to put my name on this. I can't. So I can't have you say Walker Reynolds was the architect here when we did this solution. Okay. So I can't put my name on this. So my recommendation is this. There are certain things that we know about the way this organization operates because we've been here since 2018. The local site, not the corporate company. We weren't engaged with the corporation. There are certain things we know about gaps in the process, the way they handle manufacturing operations, the way that they handle batches, the way they generate recipes and formulations and all that are abnormal. They're non-typical, they're non-conventional, which will make what you're doing over there basically impossible. Okay, so you won't be able to use that architecture to even solve their basic manufacturing execution issues, okay? So what I recommend is you guys take the rest of this week, learn as much as you can. I'm going to go back to Dallas. I'll leave a member of my team here to take notes. If you guys have any questions, he can call me. I'll jump on a Teams call with you. But my recommendation is we reconvene next week, okay? You guys learn everything you can. Let's reconvene next week. And let's put together a plan for you to do your thing and us to do our thing, and let's see who wins. Okay? And then I left. Okay? There was a vice president, executive vice president from their corporation who came out into the hallway and he thanked me and he said, I agree with you. He said, I agree that what they put on that screen is going to work. We absolutely want you guys to support this local location and we want you to help act as an accelerator for the corporate group and for this IT consulting firm. But I don't believe that where this IT consulting firm is going is the right direction. And you asked all the right questions. Okay. I said, great. I'm happy to support you. Hugs and kisses, pound it out. We leave. I leave with Josh, and I leave, and one of our other people stayed. We get a call. I get a message at the end of the next day. So maybe 20, 30 hours later, I get a call saying, hey, can you jump on a call with these guys? They want to talk to you. And there was a room full of people. And that room full of people was, hey, you're right. We got to go your direction. I assure you, if the vast majority of the people who are watching this stream, I assure you, if you had been in that room when I was challenging this architect, if you had been in that room when I was standing in front of the room and clearly everybody in the room was uncomfortable with what I was doing, except for my team, you would have never believed that they were going to call me the next day and say, we want to go with what you said. You would have thought there's no way we're ever working with that company ever again. They're going to kick us out. We'll never hear from them ever again. That's what you would have thought. That is the difference between managing and leading.